Imagine being alone in the sky when an entire enemy strike force appears on the horizon, and realizing that whatever you do in the next few minutes will decide the fate of an airfield, its aircraft, and the supply lifeline of a war. At 9:27 a.m. on December 13, 1943, 2nd Lieutenant Philip Adair lifted his Curtiss P-40 Warhawk into the hazy morning air over Assam, India. He was just 23 years old, flying his 44th combat mission with the 89th Fighter Squadron, part of the 80th Fighter Group better known as the Burma Banshees. Their job was to protect the Hump airlift, the dangerous supply route over the Himalayas that kept Chinese forces fighting. After Japan cut the Burma Road, as Adair climbed, something materialized through the haze to the east. At first it looked like a distant cloud, then it resolved into aircraft, dozens of them. 64 Japanese warplanes were heading straight for Denjan Airfield. Adair was the only Allied pilot in the sky. Over the previous 2 months, Japanese air raids had devastated Allied airfields across northeast India. 47 transport aircraft had been destroyed on the ground. 112 men were dead. Intelligence reports showed that similar raids in Burma achieved hit rates of nearly 90%. When airfields were caught without fighter cover, Denjan was exactly that: vulnerable, exposed, and critical. On the ground below sat 14 C-47 transport aircraft, each loaded with supplies bound for China. A field hospital housed 63 wounded soldiers. Fuel stocks supported 11 days of hump operations. If the bombers got through unopposed, Denjan would be crippled, and the airlift over the Himalayas could be shut down for weeks. The nearest friendly fighters were nearly 40 minutes away. Adair checked his gauges. His P-40, nicknamed Lulu Bell, aircraft number 44, was fully fueled with 180 gallons, giving him about 90 minutes of flight time at combat power. His armament consisted of 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns, but only enough ammunition for about 12 seconds of sustained fire. Against him were 24 Mitsubishi Ki-21 Sally bombers, each capable of carrying more than a ton of bombs, escorted by roughly 40 Nakajima Ki-40 3 Oscar fighters. Standard doctrine was clear. When outnumbered 5-1, you waited for reinforcements, shadow the enemy, call for help, and engage later. But waiting meant bombs would fall. Adair faced a decision no manual could solve. He could radio for help and hope fighters arrived in time, or he could attack alone and try to disrupt the raid before it reached Denjan. 6-4 enemy aircraft versus 1 P-40. Every instinct for survival argued against attacking. Adair pushed the throttle forward. The Allison V-1710 engine responded instantly, manifold pressure climbing to 54 inches. The Warhawk surged ahead, accelerating past 300 miles per hour. Adair climbed to a position for 1,000 feet above the Japanese formation, approaching from the south with the sun behind him. The escorting Oscars hadn't seen him yet. Their attention was fixed forward toward the airfield they expected to bomb without opposition. That moment's surprise was his only real advantage. Japanese pilots expected fighters over the target, not 20 miles out. Adair's plan was simple and desperate: ignore the fighters at first, hit the lead bombers, shatter their formation, and destroy their bombing accuracy. If he could make them scatter, the raid might fail even if he was shot down afterward. He rolled inverted, pulled the nose down, and dove from their 7 o'clock high position. Airspeed built rapidly: 360, then 380 miles per hour as the Allison screamed at full power. The range closed fast. The bomber crews still hadn't seen him. At 800 yards, Adair opened fire. 6.50 caliber machine guns thundered, tracers arcing toward the lead Sally. The rounds walked up the bomber's left wing. Fabric tore, metal sparked. Then the port engine erupted in flame, black smoke pouring from the cowling. The bomber lurched, losing speed. Instantly, the tight V formation dissolved. Bombers scattered left and right, breaking into chaos. Adair hauled back on the stick, pulling 7 Gs as he climbed, and rolled away. 40 Oscar fighters reacted at once, diving toward him like hawks. The Ki-43 Oscar was one of the most maneuverable fighters of the war, able to outturn nearly anything the Allies flew. Over the previous 6 months, Oscars had shot down more than 60 Allied fighters in Burma and northeast India. Adair's P-40 was faster in a straight line, but heavier and far less agile in a turning fight. Standard tactics against Oscars were drilled into every P-40 pilot: never turn with them, use speed, make hit-and-run attacks, and extend away. But Adair couldn't extend away. If he ran, the bombers would regroup and finish their attack. He had to stay in the fight alone, keeping pressure on the formation and forcing the Japanese pilots to react to him instead of focusing on Denjan. The first Oscars attacked from 10 o'clock high. Adair rolled left, pulled up, and fired a short burst. The rounds missed, but the fighters broke away. He reversed direction and dove to maintain speed. More Oscars came in. His ammunition counter ticked down 800 rounds left, maybe 6 attacks at most. Behind the fighter screen, the Sally bombers were already trying to reform into bombing groups. They were less than 20 miles from Denjan. Adair shoved the throttle forward and dove again. The P-40 accelerated past for 100 miles per hour, faster than the Oscars could follow. Leveling out at bomber altitude, he lined up on a ray-forming group of 6. At 300 yards, he fired. The lead bomber's right engine exploded in a fireball. The aircraft rolled violently, shedding debris. Its wingman peeled away to avoid collision. Adair skidded left and fired again, his rounds punching through the bomber's thin fuselage. The Ki-21 had no armor and no self-sealing fuel tanks, design flaws from the mid-1930s, but it could still carry enough bombs to annihilate Denjan. The fighters closed in again, 12 this time. Adair checked his gauges. Fuel was dropping. Ammunition was down to 650 rounds. The bombers were now about 15 miles from the airfield. Then a new problem appeared. His engine temperature was climbing fast. The Allison engine was liquid-cooled, and at sustained combat power it generated enormous heat. Adair had been running at full throttle for over 11 minutes. The coolant temperature gauge passed 230 degrees Fahrenheit, well above normal. At 250, engine failure was likely. He had 3 choices: reduce power and let the engine cool, abandon the fight, or keep pushing and risk catastrophic failure over hostile jungle. The bombers were still coming. Adair kept the throttle forward. Two Oscars came head-on, closing at a combined speed of more than 600 miles per hour. Both opened fire. Tracers streaked toward his nose. Adair fired back, his heavier .50 caliber rounds reaching farther and hitting harder. One Oscar shuddered, trailing white vapor as its coolant system ruptured. Both fighters broke away. His engine temperature hit to 140 degrees. The bombers were now 15 miles from Denjan, and two groups had reformed into bombing formations. Adair dove past the fighters again, too fast for them to intercept. He attacked the lead Sally. His rounds struck the wing root. The wing failed completely, folding upward and tearing away. The bomber rolled inverted and fell into a spin. No parachutes appeared. Again, the formation broke, but the cost was catching up to him. His coolant temperature spiked to 248 degrees. The engine began to vibrate. Detonation started inside the cylinder's uncontrolled combustion caused by excessive heat. One more hard push and the Allison would seize. As Adair pulled up, 8 Oscars dived on him from above. This time he didn't see them soon enough. Machine gun rounds tore into his right wing. Fabric ripped away. A round struck the aileron control rod, and the controls went mushy. Another burst hit the fuselage. One round pierced the coolant reservoir behind the firewall. Green coolant sprayed across the windscreen. The temperature needle climbed past 260 degrees. Steam erupted from the cowling. Oil pressure dropped. The Allison was dying. Adair chopped the throttle, but the damage was done. The P-40 began to descend. Then flames burst from the engine compartment. Standard procedure for an engine fire was immediate shutdown and bailout. But Adair was only 8,000 feet up, 12 miles from friendly territory, over jungle crawling with Japanese patrols. He chose to keep flying. He leaned the mixture to starve the fire of fuel. The flames diminished. He restored the mixture, and the engine miraculously kept running, though at barely 60% power. He was committed now. Either he flew this crippled aircraft home, or he died trying. Behind him, the bombers were turning away. Their formations were shattered. The raid was broken. Denjan was safe. 6 Oscars followed him as he turned southwest toward Naguli Airfield, 43 miles away. Oil pressure fell to 0. The engine began to tear itself apart internally. The propeller shuddered. Airspeed dropped toward stall speed. The Oscars closed in but did not fire. They watched, waiting for him to bail out or crash. One Japanese pilot pulled alongside and gestured downward land and surrender. Adair ignored him. Smoke filled the cockpit from damaged wiring. He slid the canopy open, fighting wind blast and choking fumes. His airspeed dropped further. The Oscars finally turned away, convinced he would not survive. Then another failure struck. At the 1,000 feet, the right aileron cable snapped completely. The aileron slammed to full deflection. The P-40 rolled hard and pitched into a dive. Adair pulled back with both hands. Nothing. The elevator cables were damaged. He had no pitch control. The jungle rushed up. With seconds to live, Adair had a radical idea. If damaged controls forced the aircraft down right side up, maybe flying inverted would reverse the effect. The broken aileron would push the wing up instead of down. The stuck elevator trim might lift the nose instead of forcing it lower. At 1,800 feet, he rolled the P-40 completely upside down. Negative G's crushed him against his straps. Blood rushed to his head. The engine sputtered as fuel flow faltered, but then the nose came up. The descent slowed. He was flying inverted at 140 miles per hour. For 11 minutes, Adair alternated between inverted climbs and upright descents, rolling upside down to gain altitude, then right side up to let fuel feed properly. 6 Oscars had watched in disbelief before breaking off entirely. No one had ever seen anything like it. Against all logic, the Allison kept running, with 0 oil pressure, with melted gauges, with parts literally welding themselves together. Adair reached 5,000 feet and finally saw Naguli ahead. Now came the final challenge: landing. His landing gear was hydraulic, powered by the failing engine. When he lowered the gear lever, nothing happened. With shaking hands and carbon monoxide poisoning clouding his vision, he improvised tying his seat belt around the control stick to hold it steady while he manually pumped the hydraulic hand pump. 28 strokes later, the gear slammed down and locked. With no flaps and barely any power, Adair limped toward the runway. At 2 miles out, the engine quit completely. The P-40 became a glider barely. Remembering a training note about inverted glide efficiency, Adair rolled upside down one last time. The descent rate improved just enough. At 200 feet, he rolled upright and slammed onto the runway in a brutal, gear-collapsing impact. The aircraft skidded, spun, and stopped in smoke and sparks. Philip Adair climbed out alive. Lulu Bell was destroyed. The engine was wrecked beyond repair, but Denjan Airfield was untouched. Not a single bomb fell. The hump airlift continued without interruption. 3 days later, doctors confirmed Adair had flown the final minutes with carbon monoxide levels that should have rendered him unconscious. On January 8, 1944, he received the Silver Star. 1 pilot, 1 obsolete fighter, 64 enemy aircraft. On December 13, 1943, Philip Adair proved that impossible odds mean nothing to someone who refuses to quit. If stories like this remind you why we preserve history, hit that like button and subscribe to Winds of Thought for more forgotten heroes. Turn on notifications so you never miss these stories. Drop comment and tell us where you're watching from, and whether anyone in your family served in CBI theater. Thanks for watching.